Okay, let's check the Wi-Fi. That's the right one. Cool. Okay, yeah, no background today. And yeah, looking to do some more debates and discussions. Yeah, we usually get around 70, 80 people in the streams. Loads of debates going, so give it a couple minutes. People start streaming in, and then the action will begin. Love your content and ideas, by the way. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, we got someone joining already. Mink coming up to the stage now. Hello, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So I asked a question the other day about um, whether you were going to force people basically to die,
Yeah.
and your answer was yes, correct?
Force them to be safe. Yeah.
Okay, so you know you're not talking like you think people should be sent to camps, right?
What would be the point of a camp?
Well, I'm just saying, how would you go about making sure everyone dies? Are people going to be going into camps, or how would you do that?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. I don't spend all day thinking about that.
Oh, okay. Um, my other question was, I told my best friend about your beliefs and stuff like that, and he says you're out of your mind.
Oh
Why is he
no.
wrong?
Well, there's nothing out of your mind about working towards a suffering-free world. That's the right thing for the sufferers. So yeah, a world with no fun at the expense of others. That is something that selfish people will be afraid of, but it's something that the sufferers aren't afraid of, and which they need.
So you think all sufferers wish the same thing?
No, I never said that.
Oh, okay.
No need to straw man.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure. So you're saying not all sufferers want to die?
Correct.
Okay, but they should die.
Um, they'd be better off safe. Yeah.
Okay, so you say safe instead of dead.
Well, you're kind of using buzzwords to be dramatic, it sounds like. So I can do the same thing.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just making sure. So we need people to be safe, is
Yeah.
what you're saying,
Safety comes first, right?
and that means dying.
It means not being born, basically.
Oh, okay.
Not existing.
Right, but I mean, if they're already born, then they have to die.
Well, if they're already born, then they're in danger, right? So that's a bad thing.
Okay, so death would be the safest option.
Well, non-existence is a lot safer than being in danger. That's obvious, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
So being dead is better than being alive.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But being safe is better than being in danger, basically.
Okay, I think I know what you're saying. So being alive is inherently dangerous
Yeah.
and inherently causes suffering. Therefore, being dead is the safest alternative.
Well, can you name a safer alternative?
I suppose end the sources of suffering.
Say again?
End the sources of suffering.
Right, which only extinction can do, right? There's no other way to do that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, look, if there were, and if it was an ethical way to do it, then yeah, we're not obsessed with extinction. We're obsessed with, providing safety, which is something you should be obsessed with.
Oh, okay. And I think you've said this before. If there were a if there was another solution to end suffering, you would take that.
No, I mean, it would have to be just as quick, which is very unlikely, right? You would need magic basically. And, if you want to make that, probably going to take a long time, if ever. Whereas extinction and euthanasia already exist.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that even if there were another safe option where people could stay alive and not suffer, you still would choose death.
No, I mean, look, if there's 100% safety, then there wouldn't be a problem. But when there is danger, that's when, by default, just logically, non-existence is safer.
Okay, but say for hypothetically that there was this quick way to, or not quick, but just any way to end suffering without dying. Do you don't have any other option?
What option is there?
Well, I mean, you hear
I've
the
just told
term,
you'd need magic, basically, right?
but you always hear the term like change the world. What if we could change the world without killing everyone?
Okay, but we've run through the logistics of it, the feasibility, and it's not realistic or ethical.
But what about using your movement instead of promoting complete extinction was promoting people to change their ways, to wake up, see things the way they really
That does nothing to help animals.
Okay, so then in that case you could be only for animal extinction.
No, we should help everyone, right? And look, if you can't make safe conditions for humans, then you should have human extinction as well.
But it's more likely to find a solution for humans because humans are more advanced intellectually than animals.
No, because you'd have to cure all illnesses. You'd have to ban people having their own children, right? There's simply no way to do it.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, what so okay, when you talk about illnesses, I understand that's more difficult to change than say the way people treat each other, causing suffering, right? Abuse, stuff like that. I was more referring to that. When it comes to the illnesses and things
Exactly.
like
You're ignoring the whole picture, basically.
how so?
Well, you just said you were ignoring it, right? There's lots of different types of suffering, and most of it is not from human cruelty.
Right. So things like illness and cancer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, putting all our time and effort into finding cures, maybe our energy would be better to find cures for illnesses rather than just saying illnesses are the way they are. If you have it, you need to die. Like, what if we put our energy into finding cures?
So, but how many are going to suffer in the meantime? Look, the problem is that you're not prioritizing, helping the sufferers, right? It's very low on the priorities for you, and so you're never going to actually deal with them ethically or responsibly if you're saying, well, maybe they'll get lucky. No, that's not good enough. That's the current system, and it's failing them badly.
Right. I don't mean getting lucky. I mean
You
like
do. You mean, maybe if we don't prioritize suffering, we'll get lucky and it will get solved as a byproduct. So that's basically what you're saying.
no wait. So I'm saying we don't leave it up to luck. We take it upon ourselves to make these changes, finding cures for illnesses, and raising awareness.
So how many should suffer in the meantime? Does it matter to you? Is it just an infinite number? It doesn't matter how many?
It absolutely does matter to me. I hate
So how
to
many?
think
How many? So
countless.
you're saying that we shouldn't end their suffering if we can, prioritize our own pleasure, right? So,
No,
but only extinction is going to be the way to prioritize the sufferers, though, right?
but
But what?
say if I am prioritizing the suffering
How?
because I'm just trying to think of it as I'm trying to think of it another way than just everyone dying. Like there's got to be another
You
way.
can't let the sufferers keep suffering needlessly and say that you're prioritizing the sufferers. That's not right. We have an existing solution, extinction, euthanasia. You're saying you should let them keep suffering forever until we find magic, basically.
Wait,
Promagic.com.
okay, just hear me out for a second. So, in the same way, right now you are doing activism. That is your way of. Is that your way of ending the suffering?
Yeah.
But what if you put that energy into doing things like finding cures and raising awareness on abuse?
But
You see what I mean?
because you can't do that for nature, right? That's unrealistic. And again, it's unrealistic for humans as well. It's not realistic to go after magic when we have existing solutions, right? And life is only acceptable when there's 100% certainty of safety, which requires magic, right? So that's not a realistic or ethical way to try and help the sufferers, right? Again, you're hoping it will help them as a byproduct.
Okay, my final thing I'll say. I just need to be very clear on what you said. So, if you get enough people, okay, you get enough people to do something. What is your plan?
The maximum prevention of life, basically.
I need you to be more specific. How do you achieve that?
So we start with animal extinction while removing our dependence on them, and then research how to prevent life developing for Earth and as much of the world universe as possible. Then, once humanity is no longer useful, it can be made forcefully extinct.
Once humanity is no longer useful, so once they can't help you end the suffering, because you need the humans to end the suffering of animals.
Yeah.
So after that's done, and the humans are no longer needed, you're going to forcefully execute each person.
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it'll go down, but yeah, maybe.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming on. If you have a counter argument, I'd love to hear it. But as I say all the time on this show, there is no counter argument. There is no defense of the contrary position. The thing is, right, our movement is based on rationality, meaning that if you can rationally explain why we're wrong, we will listen, right? That's why we've got conversations, debates, discussions, and that's why people come on and say, all right, that's it, I've got nothing else to say, see you later, right? But because they can't argue against it, and if they could, I would listen. Okay, moving on. We've got quite a few people in the queue now, so let's try and get through them. Bringing somebody else up as soon as we can. Someone's saying, James, you're a very radical person. Yes, we should be radical, right? That means actually addressing the root of the problem. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, I've listened to you a few times. One thing that I can't quite agree with you on is it seems like you take suffering far too seriously. When I see suffering and let's say going through hard times and not doing well in all kinds of different ways, whether or not you're sick, whether or not your parents just died, suffering seems like it's fleeting. Suffering seems like something that happens on occasion.
For who? The lucky one, right?
No, not the lucky one. I would say a majority.
Yeah.
I would say a majority.
But that's not the case for the unlucky ones, right?
Right. So what I'm saying is that because a majority is not suffering.
The majority of the population is in nature in the worst conditions with the worst suffering. So yeah, the majority suffering terribly.
You would just mean like animals that are not human beings.
Yeah.
Would you like include like insects and all kinds of bugs and stuff in the Amazon rainforest and just everything like that?
Well, regardless of what you include, every last animal is suffering terribly, especially in nature. And yeah, you should include all of them.
Why would you think that they're suffering?
We understand that, they definitely do suffer. Suffering is an essential part of life and survival. So the idea that you can live without suffering is not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see cows grazing in a field, do you think of them suffering?
If they're being eaten alive, then yeah.
Eaten alive. Okay, so don't you feel like that's more of a rare occurrence?
No, over 99% of animals in nature get eaten alive during childhood. So it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, I don't think. I guess to think about animals would be totally different. I'd have to think on that for a while.
It's only by luck that you weren't born as an animal.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of hyper focused on human beings, and of course now I'm kind of thinking about cognitive ability and whether or not they're even self aware, and if
Well, look,
if
that's the
that should
kind of
even been taken
mentality
into.
that justifies animal abuse, right?
No, you think that
Yes,
people abuse
you're
animals?
essentially saying let's not be safe rather than sorry. You're saying let's risk the suffering. Let's hope it doesn't exist, instead of the responsible thing saying, well, they probably are suffering. They might be suffering, so it's better safe than sorry. You're going
I'm
against that.
not saying anything. I told you I'd need to think about it. That's a very complex scenario. Thinking about whether or not they're self-aware and then what to do about that and how much suffering is going on. That's something I might need to think about for like a month, right? So I'm not saying anything. I would say, for human beings, that's the kind of easy topic. I think that positive things that happen to us and positive emotion and joy far outweigh the suffering, and it's really not even close.
Can you
And
name a pleasure that justifies child rape, for example, that outweighs it?
I don't know. I think that
Just
you
one,
could find.
just one example would do.
I don't know if that justifies your argument. Can you
I'm just
find
asking
something
you
that?
for one example, just one example, because that's what you said, right? That the joy outweighs the suffering. So can you
The
give one example that outweighs that suffering?
the joy of the experience that you get from life outweighs the suffering of something terrible that happens to you. Yes. And you could do that
No, no,
just
I
by
mean,
going.
no. I mean, like, if it's other people, right? So
What do you mean?
if your happiness directly depends on a child being abused, does that make it okay because you're happy?
Oh no, I think it's on a person to person basis. You have to
Right,
ask the
but
child.
doesn't work that way. Okay, without extinction, you're always going to have the unlucky ones and the lucky ones, right?
Right, and then you can
So
go and ask
your
them.
happiness does depend on them suffering.
No, it doesn't.
It
It's
does.
it's
It
on a
does
person to person
because
basis.
if nobody existed, right, there'd be no suffering, and you wouldn't have that happiness. So we have the opposite of that right now, where your happiness does depend on their suffering.
Right. So we could just talk about like some random person in India that has, terminal cancer at 20 years old. And if you want to say that my happiness depends on their suffering, you're
Yeah.
completely wrong.
Well, no, because if you're not willing to help the sufferers, you're willing to allow it, then yeah, your happiness. You're saying, right, I can either be happy or I can do the right thing and work to prevent suffering, and you're choosing to be happy instead, right?
Suffering is the cost of life. We all have to do it, and it's a
Right.
worthy
Yeah,
cost.
but again, you're justifying the worst sort of cruelty there, right? You're saying that
Why does it have to be the worst sort of cruelty? Why can't
because
it be
that's the world we
something
live in.
basic that we
Because
all
you're being naive.
experience?
Because
We can all
otherwise you're being naive.
experience,
No,
like
no.
we all
Otherwise you're
have to
being
bury
naive.
our parents. Like
Otherwise you're being
why does it
naive.
have to be the most cruel thing you can think of?
It's not that you can think of; it's that exists. So you're trying to ignore it. I'm saying no.
Why
We
do
have
we
to
have to be
account for
hyper
it.
focused on that?
Right. It's yeah. Why should we focus on the sufferers? Is what you're
No, just
asking,
in this
right?
conversation.
Because otherwise it's unethical, right? Ignoring the suffering, allowing suffering, that's unethical.
So you only want to talk about the worst things that we can think about. And,
Well,
and
nobody's talking about them, right? You're trying to ignore them now. That's part of the problem.
it's not that I'm trying to ignore them. It's that it makes for a better conversation if we talk about something that we all
Okay,
experience.
Thumper, thank you. We're not here to have a chit chat and a better conversation about just completely irrelevant topics like how can we make people happier, encourage them to go to the cinema. No, yeah, we should focus on the sufferers. They're being forced to suffer, and you've got people like you saying, ignore them, stop being so negative, stop focusing on them. So, yeah, that's why we need to focus on them, because we've got people like you saying that, yeah, let them suffer and ignore them. So, I'm not going to ignore them, I'm not going to let them suffer like you're suggesting. We should focus on them, we should help them. Okay, moving on.
What's
Sam
up,
coming on.
James?
Hey, how's
How
it
you
going?
doing?
Good, thank you.
Yo, look, so you're all about like how we should end suffering, right? Okay, so can I just paint you a picture because this is exactly how I found your content, and like it'll make sense when I tell you. But look, I was sitting in my room, right, and I just smoked a joint, so obviously I'm high, and then I come across your video, and I'm having a good time, and then I see your video, and then you start talking about all these horrible things that are happening, all the suffering that is happening, and when I start to think about that stuff, I start to suffer too, right? Because I'm thinking about suffering, so obviously I'm gonna feel bad. So wouldn't you be spreading suffering from what you're doing right now?
Yeah, but sometimes you have to cause suffering in order to end suffering.
Okay. I think that's like a really black and white way of looking at it. Cause
Oh,
like,
so what's the alternative? Using magic, basically.
I think, no, I think the alternative is literally not caring because there's going to be suffering all around us.
Great, Hassan. Thank you. Such a smart opinion. I know. Let's just not care. Wow, genius. Wow, genius. Oh my God. Okay. Let's see who else we got. Yeah, Hassan, I'm mad for caring. Wow, crazy. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good. How's your day so far?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with the extinction aspect. I communicate about it. I mean, I've talked about antinatalism, things of that nature, or ephilism, if you know what ephilism is, and which extends beyond humanity. But when I communicate it, it's the approach to like to peacefully pass away, not like to cause pain to the individuals uh, while they pass. Rather, just they peacefully uh, go out and cease to exist, not causing pain to them when this happens. Though.
Yeah, you see, the problem with that is that it allows more suffering and is unethical. It favors the lucky ones over the unlucky ones, basically.
Yeah, and that's true. Where it's like you have individuals who are having a what you could consider a an easier life than compared to the other individuals whose life is instrumentally harder. But yeah, the only approach I go towards this is like for those individuals to pass away from old age peacefully if they can, like because I don't want to add any more harm or suffering to these individuals.
Yeah, but life is going to do that basically. If you've got individuals, and they're currently lucky, they can become unlucky at any time. So safety from that is more important.
Okay. Yep. I just wanted to communicate with you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming up. Yeah, and yeah, check out the website, read about us, consider joining us, become an activist. All right, sweet. Let's see who we've got next. Okay. Also, I'm trying to start running polls on the stream. There should be one right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Nobody's voting, so maybe it's not visible or something. Sherlock, hello. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so it seems like you're affirming like a moral proposition when you say the only right thing to do, right? When you say right there, presumably you mean good, or moral. So I take a huge issue with it, affirming moral propositions if you don't have a normative theory. So do you have one?
Can you go into detail?
Yeah, all a normative theory is just like a set of principles formed into a system to tell an agent which action is right, which action is wrong. Some examples of this would be deontology, virtue ethics, utilitarianism, and so on.
Oh, it looks like people can finally vote in the poll now. But yeah, it comes from a very basic morality, which is a good thing, which is that no suffering is acceptable, and that only maximum prevention of suffering is ethical. Whereas to take away from safety for pleasure puts innocence in danger, and essentially the suffering outweighs has infinite moral value over the happiness and existence. Whereas, yeah, the suffering is too terrible to allow. Whereas, the happiness that you get from it or others get from it as a benefit is morally worthless. Essentially, it's optional. It's take it or leave it. Whereas safety from suffering is not something optional.
So you don't have a normative theory.
We don't rely on theories like that. Basically, yeah, we don't rely on.
You don't you don't rely on
Yeah,
normative
we
ethics or
rely on
philosophy to
common
tell you.
sense and empathy and ethics and morality. Yeah,
You
rationality,
think there's
logic, stuff like that.
well, I'm not even going to get into that, but yeah. So
Okay, Sherlock, such an amazing conversation. I was so desperate to continue that amazing conversation with you, but for some tragic reason, we've had to cut it short. Okay, moving on to the next person. Hello, how you doing?
Hello? Hi. I wanted to ask you if you're religious.
No, atheist.
Okay. If you were religious, do you think that you would be a Satanist?
I don't know. I'm not religious, so.
So you don't even think that if you did believe in a god, that it would result in you following the devil?
That would be pretty cool if it did, right? But that's about as much relevancy as that question has.
And why don't you kill yourself?
Well, the thing is, even if I wanted to, right, it would be difficult to do so. You have survival instinct, it can go wrong. And so people in that situation, they can't just do it. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm fascinated. This is the first I've seen of this. This seems quite draconian. I don't mean to debate you or say anything mean or anything, but what is this? This seems crazy.
Yeah, it's about providing safety from suffering and prioritizing that over everything else. So safety first.
And and just and if I'm not mistaken, right, by extinction of everything. That's the solution.
Yeah, that's the only way,
And
right? There's no.
uh,
Yeah, so I mean, if you can suggest another way, then I'm all ears.
to what? To get rid of all suffering altogether.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even necessarily know why somebody would want to do that. It's
Well,
fascinating.
because children are being abused, right? That's a bad thing. Animals are suffering terribly. So yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to end, animal farming and industry and abuse and cruelty. But empathetic people do want to end that cruelty.
By just killing everything. Sorry, I don't mean to be disingenuous. It's fascinating, truly. Like
So yeah,
I'm
the
interested.
thing is, what you're saying and saying, you sound shocked about it, right? But extinction benefits the sufferers. It only doesn't benefit the lucky ones, the oppressors, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a gamble though. Like, I assume that you're of the belief that after death is non-existence, then.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess that's a pretty that's a leap of faith, isn't it? A little bit.
Well, I mean, what's the alternative, right? If you're going to say that we should be infinitely afraid of the afterlife, then that means that we should encourage pedophiles to have more children, right? Because it doesn't matter how bad the abuse is, they're still going to be better than the afterlife, right?
Um, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that? Somebody just like tried to strike a conversation with me, and I
Yeah.
don't want to miss your point.
Yeah, I'm saying that if you're infinitely afraid of the afterlife, then, by that logic, you would be encouraging, child abusers to have more children in order to help them, right?
Um, I mean, I suppose so. I hear where the premise comes from, and so how would you go about just destroying all life? Like, is
Yeah,
that even a possible thing?
well, why wouldn't it be?
I mean, there would obviously, I would venture to assume, right, that there would be some amount of life that ex survives through whatever extinction event you would be
Well, we're not talking
going
about an
for.
event, so it needs to be organized and structured. And yeah, it doesn't matter if it takes a million years; it's still better than billions of more years of suffering.
And so I guess you would say that like the moments of joy and bliss are maybe meaningless, or do they pale in comparison, or do you
Well,
believe that they
the
don't
thing is,
exist? Or
yeah, currently the dynamic we have is that happiness justifies pleasure, right? But that's the same logic that child abusers use, basically, isn't it? So it's an unethical thing. Only a zero tolerance policy on that on suffering is acceptable.
and is it like just since seems to be a movement? Am I mistaken? Is this a movement?
Yeah.
So how would you go about just like even to like the level of like bacterium and whatnot? Like how would you manage to kill everything? How does that even happen?
Well, yeah, it's a great question, and we have millions of years to find the answer. But honestly, we've had the internet for 30 years. I think 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, it'll be a piece of cake.
Down to every single thing.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And so how do you advocate for a position like this? It is popular. It's
By
the first
making
I've ever heard of it.
videos, doing streaming, debating people. Yeah, I've got a few million views on TikTok just from doing this, and that's gotten new people into the movement to start doing activism with us.
And how do you do activism on something like this?
I've just said, like, you make videos, you get views, and you encourage people to join and grow the movement until we have enough people to change the world, make it against suffering, and carry out extinction.
Do you think that for the most part the world isn't against suffering now?
Yeah, correct. Think about it. Look, anyone can walk into a pet shop, buy an animal, and just start abusing it, bury it in the garden, and no one will ever know or care. Our current respect for life is as low as it gets, and it's completely unacceptable.
For somebody to buy a pet and treat it lovingly as well, right? I don't
But
understand. Like it's
yeah,
not like it's
but
all just suffering.
that mentality allows for infinite suffering, right? Look, someone said this to me just yesterday. They said, as long as one person is happy on the planet, it doesn't matter if everyone else is suffering so badly that they're begging for death, right? So that's a completely insane system that you're advocating for.
What do you mean? That's not necessarily my advocation.
Because you're saying that there's a ratio where a certain amount of suffering is justified if there's a certain amount of happiness, right? If a child is being raped, then it's okay if someone else is having pizza, right?
Hmm. Well, I don't necessarily think that it's that simplistic of a thing. Obviously, it's never okay, right? I mean, I would think
Well,
so.
if it's never okay, then you should support the total abolition of it and total prevention of it.
Yeah, but that comes at a high cost if it's also the total abolition of everything good.
So the cost is I don't get to enjoy my ice cream, and the benefit is that child is no longer being raped, and that's too high of a cost in your opinion.
No, absolutely not. The cost is absolutely everything ever to boil that
Yeah,
down to,
like what?
enjoying an ice cream cone.
Name one pleasure in this world that can justify a child being raped.
I think that's a somewhat disingenuous premise, but I
Well,
think
do
that
it. I'm asking for one example, right? You got all of the pleasures in the world. It's an easy question. It should be, right? If you really think that's true, give us just one example.
Well, my argument isn't necessarily that it justifies
It is.
that.
That
I
is
don't
what
want to
you're
say that on
saying. You're
TikTok.
saying suffering's fine. Don't worry about it. As long as someone's happy, it's okay.
Hmm. Even the victims of suffering, it's not as though they're suffering for all of eternity forever, right? It's not
Oh,
as though
so
they're suffering for
that's
every second
okay
of
then.
every
So
day.
just go and abuse children because eventually they'll die, and therefore it's fine.
No,
That's what you're saying.
no. How so?
You
I'm
just
not
said
saying to
like it
abuse
doesn't matter how
children.
much they
What
suffer
are you
because
talking
they'll
about?
die eventually, right? That's something that.
No, no. I said that they won't be constantly existing in a state of suffering forever.
So what's the difference between that and what I just surmised out of what you were saying?
Well, because what you've surmised is that the only answer to this is a total destruction of all life on Earth.
So what's the answer
I think
then?
that's a little bit draconian.
Okay, what's the answer then?
I think that we've been making progress as a species
And
for the most
what
part for
progress have
quite a while.
animals in nature seen? Their conditions have never improved in billions of years.
You mean just like animals like engaging in nature with one another, like hunting and being hunted?
Most animals on the planet and most of the population of the planet is animals in nature, and their conditions have never improved. They've never started building houses, electricity, medicine, right? So they've always been in the worst suffering, and it's never improved. So how are you going to abolish their suffering with 100% safety? You know, no animal eating each other ever again. I'd love to hear it.
No, I think that's impossible. Obviously,
Okay,
that's
so
impossible.
there you go. Extinction is the only answer.
Again, I think that you're giving a whole lot of weight to just like suffering in general.
And
I
you're
think
you're
that
not giving a whole
you're
lot of weight
venerating
to
that.
it. You're saying that child rape is acceptable as long as someone's happy, right?
It's ridiculous. I've never said
It
that
is
once. I don't know why
ridiculous.
you've
Yeah,
parroted that
it
like
is
5
ridiculous.
times.
It's a completely ridiculous position, and you can't defend it.
That's not my position. That's why I'm not defending it. I don't know why you've said that like 5
You've
times.
said
It makes no sense to me.
you've said you know suffering isn't that big of a deal. You've said that there's no
I
way
didn't
to
say
end
that
it.
either.
So that's absolutely what you're saying.
No,
You did
I'm
say
saying that
that. You
it's not
said what? Why are you
worthy
focusing
of
on
an.
suffering so much? All right, you're done. You're done. All right, you're done. At that point, when you're just lying about everything you've said in the last 5 seconds and you're tripping over yourself, you're done. Hello, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
Good, thank you.
Um, I disagree with the extinction of all life. If anything, I would say humans are the disease, and everything could probably be fine with just the extinction of humans.
But animals suffer worse than humans.
I don't agree. When the points you said about like building houses and building electricity and stuff like that, I would argue that that is our downfall. Everything that was given to us on Earth,
So
including
why
them.
do you live in a house then? Why don't you go and live in a forest?
So again, everything was given to us for free, and humans are the ones who made the system of it costing or us like bringing our own demise down.
So
And
why don't you
so
live in? If you hate houses so much, why are you in a house right now?
houses were already created. The society of which I live in was already created while I was born. That has nothing to do with like if I was the starter, if I was the one to make the choice for the next few generations.
You're saying that
It,
it's so great for animals to not have houses, but
they
why
do
don't you
have
join them?
houses.
Why don't you
They
join them?
do have They do have houses.
Animals
They
have
have
houses. Thank you for that lesson, everyone. That was Bully Tren, and they've informed us today that animals have houses. Okay, moving on. Yeah, I didn't know that. What type of houses do they have? Do they have like thatched roofs and new builds, and is it terraced houses? Do they have mansions? Do they have running electricity? When did animals do this? I didn't hear about this on the news. Like breaking news: dun 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 dun. Animals have been discovered creating houses with bricks and mortar. They have got full houses with roofs, windows, front doors, running water and electricity. The scientific breakthrough is truly startling. They've got schools and okay. Moving on.
So I wanted to say that your whole thing is based off suffering. So you're trying to put an objective metric to suffering. This is the same problem utilitarians face. So is your objective metric cardinal or ordinal? How's that work?
No, we don't rely on overcomplicated language like that. That's for people who can't think about things in a normal way. So the normal way to think is, yeah, suffering is bad. Yeah, it can be unacceptable. And yeah, it's more important than, preventing suffering is more important than giving pleasure to people. So pretty simple, really. Hey, Shah is joining us now.
Yeah, hello.
How you doing?
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I'll try my best not to use overtly philosophical language. I definitely don't agree that suffering is automatically negative. I understand that's your position. Yeah, I just don't
So,
understand how you could possibly reconcile that.
so being eaten alive isn't, probably isn't that bad.
Well, not all suffering is being eaten alive.
Okay, but a lot of it is. Most of it is.
No, most of suffering is not being eaten alive. I'd argue most of suffering has to do, well, especially for human beings in particular, has to do with the mind.
Do you know how often predators have to eat?
I know. I'm referring to humans. I said.
Right, but
We
we're
can
the
talk. We can talk about
minority.
animals. We can talk about animals separately, but just for the
Why?
sake of the, well, because a conversation has to move linearly. Like we can't just talk about 30 things at once. I'm open to talk about animals, but I'd like to get.
I mean,
through
we are
humans
animals,
first.
right?
Like,
We are animals, and we suffer
yes, but
just
we have a
like they
different
do.
level of I'd say conscientiousness than traditional. Either even chimps, right? Like the highest animals don't have the same level of awareness that we do.
But they can suffer worse than we do.
No, they can't. I would reject that completely.
So an animal in a cage is having a much better life than a billionaire sipping a cocktail in a swimming pool. Wow, what an amazing opinion. Yeah, animals can't suffer, and it's impossible for an animal to have a worse life than a human. Apparently, just kick them in the face. And they'll thank you. They'll love it more than the billionaire sipping his cocktail. Apparently. Wow. I dropped him. He was crazy. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
So I think something that that completely shatters your entire argument is that there are people who go through unbearable amounts of suffering, people who are child raped, and the vast majority of them make the decision to not unalive themselves. Why do they do that?
Survival instinct.
No, I don't think that's what it is.
Oh, you think they're making a rational decision?
I think they'd prefer to live a life that's meaningful and has pleasure in it.
Okay, so does that mean that it's okay for the ones who don't have a good time?
It doesn't mean that it's okay or it's not. That's the.
Well, no, you do have to decide. You do have to decide. You're saying it is okay.
I mean, I guess it is. Yeah, I guess those people would say it's okay. I mean, it's not right that it happened, but it's okay that it happened. You don't have to unalive yourself.
So all of the ones that died during the process, all of the ones that did unalive themselves, that's just totally fine.
It's not that it's totally fine, but you can.
But it's
you
acceptable. It's acceptable for you.
Yeah, a lot of people find that
The child abuse is okay.
Yeah, it's something that happens in life, and people overcome immense amounts of suffering. Many people who actually
So you're
attempt to
saying
unalive
that child
themselves
abuse is actually okay.
actually regret
you
it
said
at the end.
okay, yeah, right?
What?
But you just to be clear, you did say yes to the question. So child abuse is okay.
I mean, if people can overcome it and have meaningful lives, yeah.
And if they can't?
Well, then they make that decision for themselves and they unalive themselves. But the reason is that I'm
stop.
proving you wrong
Hang on,
because the
hang on,
vast
hang on.
majority don't.
Do you think
The
that's
vast
what
majority
happened to
don't.
Madeleine McCann?
Okay, you can bring up like very specific examples and anecdotes and
No.
stuff.
The thing is,
but
you're
the thing is,
ignoring.
you're
stop.
ignoring my point. Actually,
No, I'm trying to address your point, which is that you're defaulting to every single time ignore those who do suffer, right? You're saying, right, every single child, a victim of child abuse has a great life. And I'm like, well, what about the ones that don't? And you're like, well, ignore those. Right, amazing. I was trying to get to that point with him, but he wasn't letting me, so that's why I kicked him out. Okay, moving on. Michael joining the stage next. Rock is asking how to join the movement. Click on my profile, click on the website, and you can join through the Discord. Hello, Michael. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I'm just curious, if you really do believe in this stance, then why do you make a TikTok instead of just go out and off yourself? Not asking you to do that, obviously, but I'm just curious why
Because that would
why
do
wouldn't.
nothing to achieve extinction.
But doesn't that technically mean that you don't really believe that?
So if I do what will cause extinction, then to you that means that I don't believe in extinction.
That's my question, yes.
Michael, thank you for that inspiring question and inspiring conversation. It's one that I will surely take to my deathbed and remember fondly within my last few moments. Okay, moving on to our next guest. Hello, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You keep saying you are genetically superior, yeah, to other humans.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Logical deduction.
Explain.
And observation. Yeah, so essentially at our movement, we have observed and concluded and researched that humans evolved to be irrational, and you can actually prove this. You can point out when they're being irrational. Like essentially, what this show is a way to prove that to people. People come on the show, they seem maybe they'll be rational, maybe they won't be, and then by the end of it, they're saying completely insane things, completely irrational things, because they're trying to defend an irrational position and getting more and more desperate to do so, falling over themselves, lying,
I'm really more interested in the genetics part.
Well, this is about the genetics. So the inferior genetics cause that irrationality, and better genetics essentially allow for more and better rationality.
Okay, well, isn't it a problem that genetics has very, very little to do with your ideology?
It's everything to do with our ideology.
That's not what science is. The environment.
Is there a science book about my ideology that I haven't read?
No, but there's a science, everything about genetics not really connecting so much with your ideology as your environment does.
What are you talking about?
Your environment will cause you to have a different ideology. Yes? Much more than your genetics does.
Not necessarily. You see, that's the thing is that within...
Well, that's what research says.
Yeah, but the thing is that refers to humanity 1.0 essentially. So within humanity 1.0, yeah, you've got different religions and like you say, but we are now only just getting to evolve out of that. And so, yeah, this is a new thing, a new breed, basically. So there won't be that much science.
How do you evolve out of your environment?
How do you mean evolve out of your environment?
You will always be an environment, right? It's not like you can exist within a vacuum. Yes, so your ideology will always be changed by your environment, or at least, influenced way more than by your genetics.
Well, you would think so, but it's different.
It's not me that thinks. It's not me that thinks so.
Okay, well, look, if you're not going to let me talk, then I'm just going to have to kick you, because interrupting me every single time I open my mouth, it's very frustrating. Okay, so this is different. Essentially, it's different with this ideology. So all of the other ideologies are still pro-life. That's what I was trying to say about humanity 1.0. All of the ideologies, whether it's left-wing, right-wing, veganism, antinatalism, everything, that's all still on the 1.0 software and hardware. So it's only the 2.0 software, because the difference, and what I'm saying is true, is that all of that 1.0 stuff still has infinite acceptance of suffering, right? So it's all the same, really, right? It's all the same. The variation on acceptance of suffering is tiny, right? It's still pro-life, basically, pro-suffering. Vegans, for example, they want animals to keep suffering in nature forever. They want humans to keep suffering. So all of those ideologies, they're still pro-life and pro-suffering and irrational as a result, and unethical. So this is a completely different thing. It's a new thing. And essentially, if you have enough empathy and rationality, then you're on the 2.0. and you have a zero tolerance policy on suffering. That's the difference. So we have a zero tolerance policy. Everyone else has an infinite tolerance policy where they're saying, yeah, wild animals should keep suffering. It's beautiful that they suffer, and that we shouldn't do anything to prevent it. And that, yeah, anyone can have a child abusers, no problem. You don't see any of these people going out and saying, we need licenses to have kids or anything, right? So they don't care. They just don't care. So that's the 1.0 software and hardware. 2.0, like I made a video about this a couple of days ago. The new humanity, it has a zero tolerance policy on suffering. They're selfless and willing to commit their entire lives to work to make a better world, whereas 1.0 humans are selfish. They never lift a finger to do activism, to speak out against oppression. They're meat eaters. They don't care, right? They make no effort to be ethical or moral, whereas we make every effort to be as ethical and moral as possible. In a terrible world like this one, there is virtually infinite moral obligation. That should be obvious, right? And yet most people will never be moral, will never be selfless, will never do acts of charity, and will always just focus on their own life, and will never be willing to give up their life to sacrifice themselves for that moral obligation, meaning that they have a very hard limit on how much moral obligation they can accept. They might be able to help their neighbor to move house. They might be able to, ring the police if something happens to someone else. But they're never going to get fully committed and selfless. They're always going to say, well, maybe I can do a little bit, but I've got my own stuff to care about and worry about, all right? You do that, I've got my life to worry about. But again, that's because they have a limit on how much moral obligation they're willing to accept. They want to have that selfish life. But in this world, yeah, there is infinite moral obligation. You should be giving up your entire life to be selfless because the need is there. And another thing about that is that in terms of giving yourself up to a cause and fully committing yourself, there's never actually been a good enough one to do that with. Giving yourself up for veganism, you're not helping humans or wild animals. It's a very small scope of how much of what you're working towards. So the abolition of all suffering for all life, that's the biggest scope possible. It's the most important thing. The only important thing is providing as much safety as possible. If you don't do that, then you're by default taking away from the safety of some so that others can have pleasure and happiness at their expense, right? They're going to suffer horrifically, beg for death, potentially, right? They are right now. So yeah, it's a genetic thing where essentially, I've made a video about this as well. Why is it only coming about now? And society is evolving, right? Think about it. When we were living in the forests, we probably didn't have that much competition and stress, right? You could just chill. You could probably just, sit in the river and relax every day, right? Sure, there would be some hard work, but in this day and age, right, the competition means you have to be a millionaire if you want the best, relationships. You have to work really hard. You have to study like crazy. You have to spend the first 30 years of your life studying non-stop, right? So the competition has gotten much harder, much higher, and that has also pushed humanity to evolve. Now, whether it's something more to do with the plasticity and the upbringing, we are looking into that, but ultimately, it is undeniable that a bigger and more sophisticated brain and hardware leads to more intelligence. So in the same way that a Neanderthal would have been less intelligent than a human, right? And so, yeah, humanity and the intelligence of humanity is really on a spectrum. So most people have this myth, this delusion that every human is completely equal in intelligence. That's just a complete myth, right? Where did you get that from? It's actually a spectrum, and it is genetic, where, the people at the bottom of the spectrum, are very different to the ones at the top. And yeah, absolutely, it is genetic, and that the smarter people should reproduce more. But they're less interested in those primal needs. So I would say that in terms of rationality and the 1.0 versus 2.0 humans, that the 1.0 sort of rationality goes up to like here, whereas the 2.0 rationality goes all the way up to here. So it's not like that and then there. It's like this compared to just that. Maybe infinite, basically, where it can just keep going. So yeah, you can look at that again based on like Republicans at the bottom, right wing at the bottom, then left wing. Let's have less suffering, please, but still have mostly suffering, right? Wild animal suffering's beautiful. And then extinctionism's like, no suffering's acceptable, right? This is all of the suffering that they're willing to allow and they're happy with, they think is beautiful. And for us, it's zero. So they're animalistic, whereas we have evolved out of that animalistic nature. We are no longer slaves to our primal nature where you have to have kids, you have to just focus on your own life like an animal would. We can think bigger than that, we can think better than that, we can work towards a better world instead of just focusing on our own lives. And in the same sense, it takes less intelligence to take care of your own life. And it takes more intelligence to be thinking of the entire world and genuinely running it, right? Which is what we're trying to do. So, yeah, it is very different. And I think that it's pretty undeniable, really, that those who are, super irrational on the stream, that it is a genetic thing. They don't have essentially the brain capacity to understand bigger ideas, which take them away from their animalistic nature, right? You can't teach a Neanderthal or a monkey algebra and high philosophy, right? It's the same for humans. Hello, how you doing?
Hear me?
Yes, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. So you'd say that life has goals, right? Is that what you say?
Can you say that again? Your audio's a bit bad.
You'd say life has inevitable suffering, right?
It has risk of suffering, right? For sure.
So you'd say it's immoral to bring someone in this world, right? That's your conclusion?
No, it's immoral to allow suffering in this world and to not be working to abolish it.
And by abolish it, you mean like just remove their life. Is that what you mean?
Providing maximum safety from suffering.
Okay, so you're trying to get to a point where this can become a viable political strategy or something? Like you're trying to like make this like a real thing? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, we might carry out a revolution or a coup, or we might take it politically and democratically. We're working on every path forward at the minute, but we're willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's realistic at all. Like you said, like the humans
Do you think it's more realistic to limit our options?
No, because humans have like you said instincts, right? Instincts to survive. People are not gonna accept that. Like I really doubt that would happen ever. I truly doubt that.
I mean, the thing is, we'll just do whatever it takes and whatever seems best at the time and do our best. And we're not going to look for excuses to allow the suffering.
What about what would you say about people who commit murders, for example? Like they're just taking people out this life. Would you say that's wrong?
I'd say that all suffering is bad. Yeah.
I know they suffer in the moment because they're getting, but they're saved from a life of just a life of suffering.
Well, there's good and bad to it. There's good and bad.
So would you support that, or you say something else? You wouldn't support that?
No.
Oh. I mean, like I kind of agree with you. It's like it is inevitable. It's always going to be suffering. Suffering is like a guarantee. You can't really avoid it. So, I mean, I would say you shouldn't have kids. That's the most like realistic.
But not
But
having kids is lazy, right? It's inaction. It does nothing to help animals or anybody else.
yeah, it doesn't help anyone alive right now. It just prevents future.
But
But
it's
that,
like it's inaction. It's doing nothing and then thinking you're a hero.
no, but like it's preventing any
It's doing
future
literally
harm.
nothing and then thinking that you've done a good deed.
But what about the people today? If people like 50 years ago were some sort of anti-natalist, like they didn't want to have kids, the people today wouldn't be here, so they wouldn't be suffering either.
Yeah, but that would be a bad thing for the animals who suffer worse and would suffer for billions of years. So we have to help the animals before we help the humans.
Help them. Why do you say we should help the animals? Why do you
Animals
say
suffer
so?
worse than we do, and nobody deserves to suffer.
Oh
And
yeah, they definitely do. I think you'd be a little crazy to deny that, but I'm just saying it's like why would anyone like have to care about the animals? Like it's not because it's like animals, like we're just humans. Humans are selfish, you know?
yeah, that's it. That's what exactly. This is a perfect example of humanity 1.0. They don't care. They're selfish. Why should we care? But humanity 2.0, we were born with empathy, which means that we do care. We see someone suffering, we hear about it, and we say, "Oh, I wish I could help. Let me see if I can help." Right? Whereas 1.0 will say, "Not my problem."
Mm, yeah, that is true because even though I'd say I dislike human nature, I myself am a human. I can't really escape it. I'm still selfish, you know.
That's true. That's
We're
true.
still, we're
And
all
so I
still
don't
that.
blame you. I don't blame you. And I don't think you're a bad person because of it. It's just the way you were born, and I don't think there's anything you can do about it.
Oh, so your plan is to extinguish all life on Earth, like all of it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, but I'm just saying, it's like I don't think it's practical. Like this is like very extreme. People wouldn't agree with this.
The
Like,
suffering is very extreme. It's justified and necessary, right? The thing is, you're saying it's like it's optional, right? But for the sufferers, this isn't optional. They need to be safe from suffering.
yeah, I know. It's like, I mean, why don't you like? I don't want to get your live banned, so I'm gonna say it in like different words, but like, why wouldn't you like just take it in your own hands? Do you understand what I'm putting down?
Because, if I'm not here, then that's bad for extinction, right? I can't help make it happen.
But if you take like, for example, like 10 people out with you, wouldn't that be like, in your opinion, like better?
No, absolutely not. That would be counterproductive for the cause.
Oh, wait, why not? Why not?
Because those people are just going to be replaced by more humans. And also, for every human that exists and does live, it prevents much more wild animal suffering. Because a lot of land is dedicated to you, which prevents wild animals suffering, prevents them living there, like factories and stuff,
Yeah.
cities, your house. So, the more humans, the better. The more humans, the less suffering. And we need humanity to continue for hundreds of years while we carry out animal extinction. And then we can start thinking about making humanity go extinct. So yeah, we're not threatening any humans anytime soon. Nobody has to worry. And yeah, we should work towards a better world for humanity, for everyone. And that means, working towards no suffering.
Oh, I just disagree on the practical applications because, people are not going to agree to join your side on this
Yeah,
because,
which is why we have to take power and control the world and enforce morality, enforce what's right. Okay, right now, who is enforcing the world? It's criminals. So the world does need to be run by ethical people. Okay, I think they've gone. So that was a pretty decent conversation despite everything. It could have been worse. So moving on to the next person now. Hello, how you doing? Hello. Okay, nobody there. Moving on again. we've got a troll coming up now, so prepare for some fireworks. Hello.
Hi again. How's it going?
Good, thank you. How's the trolling going?
Oh, well, I wouldn't call myself a troll. I'm just interested. And I disagree. A question, though, about the practical side of it. So if you were to grow your movement enough where you felt like you could take over the government, so would you, there's two questions I've got. So would you feel like you would do it one country at a time, or would you try and do it as many countries at a time? Because I suppose then that would avoid, say you took over Britain, someone could come in and then kick you off, couldn't they? Say America could come over and be like, oust you. So would you try and do several countries at once? Like, do you have a plan in that mind?
That's a great question. No, we haven't fully planned it out yet. And the thing is that we're at such a initial stage of the movement that there are loads of questions like that question that, yeah, should be answered at some point, but we're not focusing our resources on answering those future questions just yet.
Why not?
Because it's going to take a very long time to grow the movement, to have enough people to get anywhere close to that. And so, if it takes 100 years to get, thousands of people or millions into the movement, the more people we have, the easier it will be to start planning those things, answering those questions. And at the minute, we're focusing mostly just on growing the movement.
I've got two more questions, actually, if you don't mind. So my next question, I agree with you that the world is run by criminals who have a false sense of morality to get away with, well, I don't need to go into that. I'm sure we agree on that point. However, running governments is very complicated. How are you going to, I suppose it's another question that you guys haven't thought of or haven't been able to, to come to a conclusion. How could you possibly run a government? Because then you're going to have like ministers for transport making the trains don't collide into each other, make sure that, people are being paid their benefits or being trained for work. Like, it's really complicated, isn't it? How are you going to make that happen?
Well, there's already people, occupying those positions.
What, in government, you have pro-extinction people?
No, I'm saying that, not everyone in the government would have to be like a diehard, the bus drivers don't have to be extinctionist,
No, but all of these positions have to be managed on, a tiered basis, don't they? So how would you...
I don't think they necessarily have to be a full extinctionist. They can just be really good at their job with transport or whatever.
But you'd have to have all the ministers would have to be pro-extinction, wouldn't they?
I suppose
because if
probably, yeah.
If they weren't, then you wouldn't be able to make it happen. Everyone in power would have to be on board to make it happen.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So you guys would have to have some sort of practical training or
Trump didn't, right?
Political education. Sure, he didn't, and there are many, but then he is a front man, isn't he? He's more of a face. There are a lot of people behind him who have a certain idea of how they want things to move, but then they are making a bit of a mess of things. So, you could go in and make a mess of things and push your ideology as they're doing. Also, my third question, although you are saying that I've heard people say, the questions that come up quite regularly are, why don't you just off yourself? And you've given an answer to that. Or would you be happy if someone took somebody else's life? You wouldn't be happy with that. But if you have, say, depressive teenagers who are watching your lives, watching your videos, my concern is that even if you're not saying go and kill people, be careful with words I'm using on TikTok, but you could inadvertently and realistically be encouraging a depressive teenager to go and take people out before they take themselves out.
We actively discourage suicide, and I make videos saying, don't commit suicide. Try and do something good with your life. If you think your life is terrible and unlivable, then others are going through that, and see, if you can help them, then that might actually make you feel slightly better that you're not suffering for no point. But yeah, you're right. That what you said could happen, absolutely could happen, right? But what's the alternative? Yeah, we might have some collateral damage, but if we just sit on our hands and do nothing, then the damage is going to be way worse.
Well, I think those are my questions for now.
But we're always happy to consider stuff like that, and it is a very valid point to raise. We should absolutely be careful with our languaging, and I could probably do a better job at that as well. So, like I try to say to people all the time, being rational means that we are open to criticism. It's our moral obligation to be open to criticism.
Because I think you should be very wary. There are going to be some, mainly I'm thinking teenagers, but there's going to be people at home who have no friends, never go out, and people get into these just these echo chambers or these circular thoughts on the internet, which is how you get the rise of incels, etc. And you should be very wary of that. Like it's a real safety concern what you're promoting.
True. Yeah, you're right. Obviously. Yeah, absolutely. So we should definitely consider that, and maybe have more disclaimers, and be more careful with the language. But at the same time, we still have to be unapologetic with the message. We can't hide the logic and the reasoning, because it's a necessary part for people to understand the whole thing.
Sure, this is it's your ideology, and you want to be unapologetic about it. But yeah, I think that's very concerning.
There's a balance there for sure.
Because the thing is I don't know about you personally, and obviously you have this very hard line idea that no joy can outbalance suffering. But there are some people who don't agree with that, aren't there? And
most people,
yeah. I'm just wondering what safety you're putting in place to avoid that.
Well, almost every day I have people messaging me asking for help with unaliving themselves. And I say to all of them, look, I can't help you. All I can recommend is maybe try and do activism so that nobody else has to go through what you're going through. And I tell them, some people in our movement do have depression, and they do find a sense of community with, like-minded people and a sense of purpose, trying to make sure that nobody else ever has to suffer the same.
So if you want people who feel suicidal to stay around, then a big part of, not going into that suicidal depression is to find joy in life. So do you encourage people to find happiness whilst they're here?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I always say, we need humanity to continue for hundreds of years at least. So yeah, they should be happy during that time.
Okay. So you advocate for happiness. So if people, you want people to have children, and so obviously you want the children to have a joyful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you advocate for a joyful existence.
If we took power tomorrow, we'd be working towards a perfect world for humanity, one that's run ethically and in a nicer way for everyone. That might mean more checks on children, for example, so that you don't have so much child abuse. There's lots of ways that we can improve this world.
Okay, so you'd want it to be as joyful and as wonderful for everybody before you.
Yeah, why not?
Perfect. Okay. Well, I suppose that's it. I could talk longer, but I suppose there's other people who want to have things to say. But,
well, thank you for coming up, Addie. It's been a nice conversation, and I appreciate your questions. And yeah, look, we can all do better, and us at the movement, we're always trying to do better and understand how to be more ethical. It's something that we're actively trying to improve at all times. And yeah, if we're going to try and run the world and even just have messaging, then yeah, we have moral obligation. Even if we're just putting out a video, like you say, it could be interpreted badly. And yeah, I do have lots of crazy people message me. In fact, I get suicidal people message me every day asking for help, saying, can you help me to die? And I also get crazy people every day, even one today saying, I want to start killing people. Can I join the movement and, start committing murder? And they're serious, like legitimately serious people. So, we have to shut that down as hard as possible. And, I do try to say peaceful activism in my videos, and that we need humanity to continue for hundreds of years. So yeah, in terms of like immediate human harm, we're completely against that. It would be counterproductive for the movement. And yeah, we can try and get the message out there more. All right, let's see who else we got next. Don't know how much longer I can stream for, but we could probably do at least one more. Okay, let's bring on David. David,
Yo, why don't you kill yourself, man?
Because that would be counterproductive, right? You can't cause extinction of humanity by doing what you suggested. I'd just be replaced by another human, right? Going into a forest and euthanizing one deer doesn't cause extinction of deers. Now does it, my dear? Okay, let's see who else we got. Right, the queue is pretty empty right now, so the queue of liberty needs refreshing with the blood of some patriots. So join up and we'll get you on the stage if you got some questions. Let's see who we got. Okay, Miss Gabe's coming on now. And 3, 2, 1. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello, good evening.
Sorry, a lot of thunder and lightning where I am. Yes, how are you doing? Do you have any questions for us today?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah?
So I currently came across a person that has put a couple of people through a lot of pain. And this particular person, they were given like the mandate to to work for, like, to give up a couple of people a good future, and they messed with it all, and they come up with a theory that life is meant to be hard and people are meant to suffer. So I am in a really bad state right now, and that's why I don't know, TikTok just knows, I don't know, it kind of reads your energy, and I just came across this, and I don't know, is it fair? Somebody just, they have a good life and they have the right, everyone gives them their coins, and then they go and then they just ruin everything, and then they come back with a theory that
Yeah,
life,
yeah. I get you, Miss Gabes. Totally, yeah. The system we have is of unlucky ones and the lucky ones. And the thing is, even the unlucky ones, the worst off sufferers in our world, in particularly people I'm talking about now, even they are locked into what evolution has done to them, right? So they may understand, I wish I was never born, but unfortunately they're still on the 1.0, and so they don't know that they can help others to be safe from that. So yeah, the only right thing is to provide safety for all from this suffering. Otherwise you end up with people like this and they get ignored, right? We need to stop ignoring them. People keep saying on my show, oh, you're too focused on the negatives. Well, you're ignoring the sufferers. So yeah, I'm going to focus on them because nobody is, right? You can go to a pet shop, you can buy an animal with no license, take it home, abuse it. You can have a child, abuse it, right? Our respect for life is as low as it possibly could be. You know, a criminal, a psychopath can just walk into a pet shop, buy a bunch of animals, and then just take them home, put them on the dark web, start making money from live streaming their torture and cruel death. And they are doing this. Like, this is not a hypothetical. This happens, like, literally every day. Literally every single day on this planet, a psychopath does go into a pet shop and buy some victims. They buy some victims, okay? Victims for sale here, victims for sale here, right? That's what we're doing. So we have this infinite sort of acceptance of suffering, this zero respect for life, zero safety for life. As long as life exists, then it can get, you know, mashed up. It doesn't matter. It does matter, right? Animals should not be commodities that you can eat, that you can just go into a shop and buy, and then just immediately start smashing their head on the ground. Like, this is crazy that we're giving people this freedom. And you can say, oh, well, you know, we'll arrest them afterwards. But that doesn't help the victim who's now dead and been tortured to death, right? You know, I could go and torture someone right now. Yeah, the police might show up eventually, but it's too little too late if you know, if the damage is already done. What if I take someone's eyes out or something? They're screwed, right? So we have the freedom, we glorify the freedom in this society which causes the worst suffering. If you just give people infinite freedom and life, then they just go and do the worst things, and they are doing it. So this is just always going to happen. How is it ever going to get better, right? You know, can you really think that every animal in nature is just magically going to never suffer ever again without extinction? Is that realistic? And, you know, people have this mentality of, oh, just reduce the suffering. So, but you're still guaranteeing victims. You're still saying that it's acceptable if they suffer. Let's just, you know, maybe reduce it a little bit, but not as a priority. If you want to prioritize the suffering and getting rid of it, you do extinction, right? If you don't care about the sufferers, then you don't do extinction because you want life to continue so you can keep abusing it, basically, and keep having the unlucky ones suffering so that the lucky can enjoy their misery. I mean, look, someone said to me yesterday, the other day, they said, every time I see animals eating each other, I find it beautiful, I find it inspiring. And yeah, so look, the respect we have for life right now, it could not possibly be worse, it couldn't be lesser. That there's just so much danger that we're forcing life into and normalizing it. Again, you just sell animals. You know, these victims are just waiting to be purchased by psychopaths. Children are being born into dungeons and everyone's saying it's fine. Children are being born into depression, right? And everyone's saying it's fine. They're being born into illnesses and everyone says it's fine. So, you know, the worst suffering is happening and everyone says it's fine. So look, some people come on this show and they say, James, end all suffering without extinction. Well, firstly, you know, talk me through how that's possible. And secondly, go and advocate for that yourself. What the heck are you doing, right? How are you working towards a zero suffering world? You're not, right? You're just telling me not to do extinction. You're not giving me a real argument or a rationale. We've got Katie in the show. Hey, Katie, how you doing? And let's see what other guests we can bring up now. Noisy Attic, let's try and bring them back on. Noisy Attic, hello again.
Hey, it's me again.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. Sorry, I got my one kid on my shoulder here now. I know you might hate that. So, big question, or more statement. I don't think you completely understand evolution.
Okay.
I mean, like, the environment is the thing, right? You survive in the environment, that's the thing. And then, therefore, your genes pass on, yeah?
That sounds like a bit of a simplification.
Okay, can you make it better?
Well, you're coming on and saying, I don't understand evolution, and then you're saying, it's just the environment, right?
No, that's
doesn't
not what I
sound like
said.
you understand evolution.
That's not what I said. I said you have to survive in the environment, yeah?
I mean, there's more to it than just survival, but yeah.
Okay, and then also, I mean, that would mean genetically, we cannot be programmed for extinction.
Why not?
Right? Because evolution is based upon survival. There's no genetic trait that makes you want to kill yourself.
Extinctionism isn't about doing that.
Yeah, but extinctionism is only an ideology once more. Yeah? I mean, you got it from your environment. You weren't born with that idea.
It is genetic. You are born with the capability to reach this idea.
Capability.
Yeah.
And then how do you reach that idea with the capability? Someone
Yeah,
introduces
so
you to the idea,
it's a bit of a secret, really, and I don't go into it all that often. But yeah, there are things, there are topics and subjects which are beyond the intelligence of most people to think about. I made a video about this recently. So
Well,
yeah,
hang on. I mean, we can agree that for an organism to survive, it has to survive in an environment. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. And you came from an environment, yes?
Yes, but I understand what you're saying now. But the thing is, you have mutations, right? You also have evolution as well, and unintended effects of evolution.
Like what, your brain is special towards mine, or compared to mine?
Well, everyone has different brains.
Sure. Why?
You made it sound like you were an expert on evolution when you came on.
Yes. Why do people have different brains?
But that's how evolution works. That's how genetics
Yes,
works.
because of their environment, yeah?
Not exclusively.
It is primarily. Like you're born with maybe like basic ideas, but not, I mean, like, you know how to breathe, you know how to eat, maybe that, but not like I'm a Christian, like, or I'm an whatever.
Yeah, but you get mutations though, don't you?
Yeah, but mutations are physical traits. They're not ideas.
But they can lead to ideas, right? In the same way that a donkey can't understand extinction. A lot of humans can't.
Yeah, but you see, that's still an idea. It's still in the environment. There's no genetic trait that's connected to, like, your brain isn't going to go, oh, we need to make sure life is, gone. There's no evolution doesn't work like that. Evolution is based upon the idea that the organism survives. There's no genetic trait that will...
obviously you're not born as an extinctionist, but you can be born with enough empathy and rationality to reach that conclusion.
But you can only get that conclusion by being introduced to it from the environment. Yeah.
How do you mean?
Okay, so if you are an extinctionist and you go around like donating sperm, right? So then there's like maybe there's like 100 babies of yours, yeah?
Okay.
Okay. In what environment are those babies?
Pro-lifers, normal people.
How do you know? Like,
most likely it's going to be a normal
their
person.
ideas are going to be based upon their environment. It's not going to be based upon your sperm.
Right, but the first extinctionist, it was based on their genetics, right? Not their environment, not their family.
How so? That gene came out of nowhere.
That's how mutations work. You should read about evolution and genetics.
Hang on.
Because
mutations are physical traits. They're not ideas.
Right, but they can lead to different ideas. In the same way that a donkey can't have ideas and we have different brains, we can have different ideas to a donkey.
Yeah, but those different ideas come from the environment. They're enforced by the environment. You're not...
Oh, really? So yes. People with like brain disabilities, they're still perfectly capable of having the same ideas?
No.
Okay, so there you go. Different brains create different ideas.
Oh, but that's a genetic trait. Their brain is damaged.
And you can have better brains genetically as well.
Sure, But
There
none
you
of
go.
those
So
brains,
that's it. That
none of
answers
those
your
brains
question.
exist without an environment.
What?
None of those brains exist without an environment. The environment is going to influence the ideas of those brain way more than the genetics are.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, in humans. No, don't talk about the donkey again. In humans.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Correct. In fact,
okay,
you're
cool.
wrong. Like,
So,
look, as a researcher and a scientist, I can tell you that you're absolutely wrong.
no. no. A brain, yes, that brain has to survive in an environment. Okay, yes, well, it has to. There's no not environment.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you've been spending too much time in your environment, and you need to get out a bit more. Okay, let's move on to let's bring Katie up. Have a fun conversation. Might be interesting. Probably a better conversation than the last one. Katie, let's bring you up. Let's if you want to join the stream for a bit, let's do it. I've sent you an invitation. Hey, how you doing?
Hello, nice to meet you in person, so to speak.
Yeah. How you been?
Good. So I'm open to what you're saying. I agree with you that there's a lot of suffering, there's needless suffering, and you're right that every being brought into life is facing a lot of suffering ahead. It's obvious. I'm coming from this as a grandmother who has 2 grandchildren, 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, and of course I love them, but I have 2 sons who don't have children yet. And of course I'm somewhat tempted to tell them, every time you suffer, it's going to be your kid's fault. It's going to be your fault if your child suffers, rather. So I'm just having a hard time with the idea of how to get there, because I know you say you used to be vegan, and because you don't want the animals to suffer, so you seem like a good guy. And I just have a hard time with this idea of are you trying to convince me to start eating animals again in order to achieve this goal? Because that's a tough one for me.
No. So the leader of our movement, the person who created the movement, he was a vegan, and he was an animal liberator. So he was saving animals from farms, saving them from injuries in the forest, and he realized that this was just going to keep happening forever for the rest of time. And so he thought, how do we prevent all of this suffering? And so Steve, the creator of the movement, he's plant-based, and so he will tell you more than anyone that according to the science of our movement, that veganism does cause more suffering, but he is still plant-based because he does not like eating meat. And so we actively tell everyone, we don't care if you eat meat or if you're plant-based. What matters is working towards the abolition of all suffering.
But you see, that's the part I have trouble with. To me, I can understand the end goal, to convince people to stop having babies and to find a way to prevent lions from existing who rip baby zebras to shreds and all of this. It's just that I think realistically that this is not going to happen in the next few years in my lifetime. And I cannot see myself going to a grocery store and starting to buy animals who have been murdered, who are
like
stuck
I say,
on
the leader of the movement who is has done
yeah,
lots
but
of
you
videos.
I heard what you said, but I'm just trying to see for yourself personally. So not just him, right? Because of course there's a difference between plant-based, which means that you just might not like the taste of meat or whatever. So being an ethical vegan, as you know, is about not contributing to any suffering now in our lifetime. So every time I go to a grocery store, I try to make the most ethical choice. That is to say, not buying eggs and not buying cheese or any animals. So how do you, I guess what prevents me from joining you seem like everyone's saying you're unhinged, but I see where you're coming from. I think you're just totally freaked out about all the evil in the world, and rightly so. And so, but I think that if you were vegan, I would probably join you much more rapidly than if you have this stance like, hey, we don't care if you eat meat, join us anyway. It just seems hypocritical and wrong. So how can you convince, like, I guess I'm going to try to convince you to be vegan in the meantime, or you're going to convince me, like, I can't see myself joining a group with a bunch of people, and when we meet, they're all just eating animals because way in the future, all the suffering will stop. But right for now,
No, that's not the reason, right? It's not because in the future it will stop. The thing is that our research has shown that eating vegan causes more suffering to wild animals, basically. So if that weren't the case, maybe it would be different. Maybe we'd encourage veganism more. But
how do you come up with that equation?
well, I did try to show you the data on it. It's on our website. You can check
But
it all out.
since there's 142 people right here right now, it's hard for me to imagine that somehow me becoming vegan is going to do that. Like, I haven't seen. Do you have a
For
research
example,
article?
being vegan saves about 30 square foot of forest a day. So that's 30 square foot of forest a day where there's going to be loads of wild animals suffering, right? So, I mean, in the same way that, we take up loads of land, whether it's roads, houses, cities, deforestation to build furniture and chopsticks, that's all denial of suffering for wild animals, basically. And
So what you're saying is every time every time they erect a McDonald's and they plow down the forest to put this McDonald's there, yay, in your opinion, good job.
Yeah.
That's just too much for my brain. I can't deal with that one.
Well,
I guess I'm thinking
think
about
of it this way. Think of it in terms of the red button, right? The red
hold on a
button
second.
idea.
Hold on one sec. I think to me it has to do with more sentience. Like, yes, these insects are suffering, but they're not as sentient. When you plow down some land, you're not like bulldozing creatures who have do you know what sentience means, right?
Well, I mean,
The ability
insects
to
may well be sentient, and even if it's just insects, there may be other animals there as well. So it might not just be insects.
So were you actually vegan at one point?
Yeah.
And so how long were you vegan for?
It was like 3 or 4 months, but I was like extremely allergic, so I had to quit.
Okay, so the reason that you're not vegan is not because you really believe in this movement that you should be. It's just, what do you mean allergic to what? What were you allergic
Well,
to?
I tried to be vegan, and I'd never been sicker in my life for several months, and it got to the point where.
But maybe you just weren't eating healthy, because that's the way it is. Most people, you can't just eat fries and drink Coke. You
No, I
gotta
wasn't.
eat
I was
healthy.
trying to eat as healthy as I could.
Well, I would encourage you to go back to become vegan, and because your allergies are not the animal's fault. And in the meantime, I think if you really care about your movement, first of all, you can join challenge22.com to help you with
The thing
this.
is, Katie, you've come on here and you've said that we shouldn't care about insects suffering.
No, I never said that. I'm
You said
talking about.
you said you downplayed their sentience and the importance of their
Well,
suffering.
because we don't know to what degree that they are sentient regarding, let's say, compared to a cow or a pig
So that
or a
means we can
chicken.
just abuse them?
So, not at all. But I just don't believe that what you're saying is going to actually cause less harm. I don't see that. It's hard to measure suffering in a
The thing
person
is,
or
the problem is with
being, right?
vegans is that they're blind to all of the suffering in nature, right?
Not at
Vegans
all.
say they care about
Not at
animals.
all. I talk about it on my channel all the time about how evil God is who have created these lions and all of these animals and people,
Right,
animals who are
but
victims
we
of
should do something
parasites.
about it. We should do something about it.
Right, but I guess I'm feeling like if you are not striving, like what your personal example here of saying that you were vegan for a while and then you decided not to be vegan because of the fact that you were quote unquote allergic is a little bit suspicious to me. It doesn't sound like you really gave it a full shot. But look, thanks a lot. I'll keep listening, and You know, keep doing your best. If you become vegan, I will most likely join your movement.
Okay, well, that's never going to happen. The thing is, right, you know, you can tell a vegan what you're doing, and I can scientifically prove it causes more and worse suffering, and they'll run away, they'll leave before you can get to that part of the debate, and they'll try and avoid it, right? So we're never going to appeal to vegans like that, because again, vegans are people that, you know, they're no different really to anyone else in this society that is not willing to take action for the abolition of all suffering. Again, you've got, look, Republicans, Democrats, you know, vegans, antinatalists, they're all sort of on the same band for how much suffering they allow. And there's a lot of suffering in this world, okay? So they're all sort of on the same boat with that. Okay, so being vegan, you know, you're still saying, yeah, animals can suffer in nature. The vast majority of the population, which is animals in nature, can suffer the worst conditions, right? Worse than farmed animals, worse than humans. So that's, you know, a huge amount of suffering. Then you've got human suffering, all animal suffering, right? The unlucky animals. So vegans are happy with all of that. You know, if you think about like the suffering in the world and how vegans are going to change it, it's a tiny amount, right? Tiny. So they're fine with the suffering. They still want to live their life at the expense of the sufferers. You know, I made a video about this. Every time a vegan, you know, steps outside and, you know, stands on an insect or runs over them in their car, that's suffering that they think is acceptable, right? They say, oh, you should reduce suffering where convenient and practical. That still means that you're fine living your privileged life at the expense of those animals. And you're also not helping the animals, right? So not causing the suffering is one thing, but allowing the suffering is even worse, actually. So yeah, that's our problem with vegans, and we're never going to be apologetic and say, you know what? Okay, vegans, wild animal suffering doesn't matter. Be vegan, right? Let's make wild animals suffer so that you can feel better and more morally superior. You know, basically making wild animals suffer for the benefit of farmed animals, so that you can look better, feel less guilty, while still selfishly enjoying this world and your privileged life at the expense of the victims. Okay, Anna is saying, I still don't get it. So, the thing is, right, a vegan world would have, like, basically, well, actually, what would a vegan world look like? It's a difficult question to answer, because vegans, again, they do think suffering is acceptable and just a part of life. So when a vegan runs over a squirrel and leaves it disabled, that's just an unavoidable part of life, basically. So that suffering is acceptable. It's a part of life. We shouldn't try and have extinction. Okay, so they're fine with the suffering. So yeah, in the same way that vegans want me to say, you're a better person for not eating meat, even though they're actually making wild animals suffer worse than the farmed animals. They want me to tell them that they're a good person, right? They understand that, the authority on ethics and morality saying that, no suffering is acceptable. They want a pass, right? They want me to say, I give you a pass, I forgive you, your sins are forgiven, you can go back to being selfish and deluding yourself into thinking that veganism means that you're now ethical, even though, again, look, think of it this way. Throughout your 80, 90 years of life as a vegan, how many wild animals will suffer for your benefit? Now, how many animals are you going to stand on? How many insects are you going to kill? How many restaurants are going to kill mice and rats so that you can eat there and enjoy the food with hygiene? Right, and how many roads are going to be built, over animals? How many animals died when your house was built? When you're ordering off of Amazon? All of this stuff, right? The idea that you cannot go through an entire life in this world, this incredibly evil world and society, and look, now she's saying accidental deaths are not our concern. So that's it. You're out of here. I never want to hear from you again, KD, right? Accidental suffering is not our concern. Well, that's disgusting, right? You're saying that, those animals screaming for help, begging for help, suffering horrifically, that's not our concern. Right, so that instead of being concerned about those animals and caring for them and not wanting them to suffer, you can be selfish, so that your concern can be selfishness, right? That's it, right? Those animals aren't your concern, KD, so that you can be selfish, right? So yeah, vegans disgust me. I hate them. You know, look, she literally came on and said, well, wild animal suffering's fine. You know, maybe they don't even feel pain. Maybe they're not even sentient. Now she's saying, look, the suffering of those animals isn't my concern. Like, look, when I try to say that vegans are the exact same as everyone else, this is what I'm talking about, right? They'll come up and say, animal suffering's just a part of life. You know, animals screaming in pain, that's just acceptable, right? That, you know, that's not my concern. So it's absolutely revolting, and no suffering is acceptable. And to say that, you know, wild animals matter less than farmed animals is just revolting. I don't care if it's accidental, right? It is in your control. It's going to keep happening, and it will just always happen unless you fight for the end of all suffering. You know, what's the alternative is to just enjoy this world and benefit from the suffering. You either fight the system or you're a part of the system, a part of the oppression. So yeah, vegans are oppressors, right? They say that animal suffering over there, not my concern, right? You know, scream louder. Hey, you, scream louder and maybe I'll think about it. Not really, because it's not my concern. Oh, the animal screaming over there in pain? It's hurting my ears now, so I'm going to walk away from it. That's what these vegans are advocating for. Like, legit. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. She said it in the chat. Not, you know, those animals aren't my concern. Those insects don't matter. So vegans are literally LARPing as good people. They are pretending to be good people so that they can feel better. You know, they can walk past wild animals suffering, screaming in pain and say, well, I didn't eat a burger today, so that suffering is beautiful. It's absolutely disgusting. It's just pure LARP, pure, how to describe it? Pure virtue signaling, sort of, yeah, pretending to be a good person, pretending to be better, right? Pretending to be better. Again, vegans are just happy with all of the suffering in this world. They think it's beautiful. They think that, you know, insect suffering is beautiful, wild animal suffering is beautiful, and that it should just keep happening. And then she was, not to mention, right, how many times she strawmanned me and said, oh, you didn't really try hard to be vegan. Well, how do you know, right? I did actually try hard. I was extraordinarily ill for like 4 months while trying to be vegan. I was literally on the toilet all day, every day, like non-stop, 24/7 on the toilet. I mean, I probably would have ended up in hospital had I not quit. And, you know, when I tried to explain to her that, yeah, if you care about suffering, you should look at the whole picture, including wild animals. She's like, no, forget the wild animals, let them suffer. We should just help the farmed animals because it's easier, basically, right? So, yeah, she wants an easy life. She wants wild animals to suffer. She wants insects to suffer. And she wants to be an oppressor while feeling like pretending not to be an oppressor, right? But, you know, you can't believe in vegans like that. You can't give them any sort of respect when they come on and say insect suffering doesn't matter, wild animal suffering doesn't matter, their suffering isn't my concern. Like, you're literally, you might as well be a Republican at that point, okay? You know, just, you're basically a Republican, a vegan Republican at that point. So yeah, veganism does nothing for humans, it does nothing for wild animals. In fact, it's worse than that, okay? Veganism, not only does it cause more suffering than it prevents, it actually normalizes the idea that you can ignore wild animal suffering and be a good person. It normalizes the idea that you can live in this system without fighting against it and be a good person, right? It normalizes the idea that the, you know, thousands and thousands, if not millions, probably millions of animals which will suffer directly because of you during your life, right? Or indirectly, doesn't matter. That's okay, right? That it's justified. You know, she said, well, it's not our fault if, you know, a bit of accidental suffering, so what? But why should they have to suffer, right? Yeah, you accidentally got out of your Ferrari and stepped on an insect, right? And their accidental suffering isn't your concern. It's disgusting. Absolutely morally repugnant. And the amount of straw man's disgusting. The amount of wild animal condemnation, disgusting. And the amount of wrapping herself in this cloak of I'm a good person while saying that wild animals should suffer. I'm not buying it, okay? I see straight through that. You are a bad person. You are a selfish person. You're happy for suffering to continue. You're basically no better than anyone else. And yeah, veganism is you just do this one little thing and that's it. All the suffering you cause to wild animals is now acceptable. So no, we're never going to say that you need to be vegan to join the movement. Currently, we say that whether you eat plant-based or whether you eat meat, you can still do activism for the movement, and we have both vegans or plant-based people and meat eaters doing activism for the movement. And in fact, ironically, the majority of our activists fighting for the abolition of all suffering are carnists or meat eaters. Now, look, obviously you should at least think vegan, right? I tried to go vegan. So I'm not saying that abusing farmed animals is somehow okay. But I am saying that, those meat eaters are more ethical than vegans. And, specifically, you should look at the research on our website, which again, she refused to look at for the third time now. Just didn't even want to talk about it. We've got all the data, we've got all the science, the charts, the graphs, you can go and look at it. We've got it on our website showing that yes, being vegan causes more suffering to wild animals. You can go and read it, you can go and look at the charts, the proof, okay? But just like the other vegan fairy that didn't care about the source, right? Regardless of the source, basically the same as this vegan. Okay, you show them some evidence that what they're saying is wrong, and they say, oh, forget that, let's talk about something else. So I think we should ban Vegan Katie from spamming misinformation in the chat about how veganism is good. So yeah, we're going to ban her now, and hopefully never hear from her ever again. She is banned and blocked. She's cooked and served just like a steak. Awesome. So yeah, if you eat meat right now, it will reduce suffering. For example, right? Let's say you have a field with some cows, okay? Those cows are going to be in relatively good conditions, and they're taking up a lot of space, a lot of resources. The alternative is a forest full of animals, right? Just absolutely teeming with animals, eating each other alive, starving to death, no medicine, no shelter, no safety, right? So, a vegan world would have no deforestation. It would have no... Well, again, I was trying to talk about this earlier, but I want to say that a vegan world would have no deforestation. I want to say that a vegan world would have no, human construction, bulldozing over the bodies of animals. But it does, okay? It absolutely does. A vegan world is just full of animal suffering. I can't even begin to imagine what a vegan world would look like, right? Because they're saying, well, yeah, some animal suffering is totally fine so that we get to live, right? As long as you don't eat them, it's fine if they suffer in any other way, which also is another really funny thing, right? Eating animals causes them no suffering, right? They're dead when you eat them, and they get euthanized before they're killed. So they literally care about the most inconsequential suffering ever, right? It's just absolutely hilarious, honestly. It's just insane. So yeah, if you care about all suffering, if you're working on the bigger picture, the whole picture, then you'll look into it. Will going vegan cause more suffering or less suffering? And vegans don't do that research, okay? Because they don't care about wild animals. Wild animals are just fodder for their virtue signaling. So they don't care about wild animals. She came on and said, let them suffer, let them rot. And so yeah, if you're making a genuinely responsible decision about all the suffering, then you should look into it. You should see, okay, does veganism reduce suffering? No, it doesn't. We've done the research on it. you can look on that on our website. It's all there. So let's see, we've got some questions. Could I join, please, to make a point, agreeing with what you're saying? The thing is, I kind of have to go. It's pretty late. It's my girlfriend time now. But I'm glad we destroyed some vegans today and destroyed some veganism. They really deserve it. They deserve to get absolutely logically annihilated because they're causing more suffering and glorifying the idea that you can be a good person while causing suffering. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Follow me, check out my recent videos, and yeah, I'll probably see you all tomorrow. It's been a great stream. I hope you like the new background. I thought it was kind of cool. But yeah, thanks everyone. And join the movement, join the Discord, go on the website, click on my profile, click on the button for the website. You can join the Discord, join the WhatsApp, become an activist, talk to me and the rest of the team, and help us fight for a suffering-free world, and help us fight against those pesky vegans